Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. My name is Paula Brodie. I'm from the 1 Million Women team, and I will be your host for this evening's event. Before we begin the chat, please note we are recording the event and we will be posting on public channels. So if you can please ensure your microphone is muted as we go along. I want to acknowledge that the area that we live in, the Berowra electorate, is on the land of the Darug and Guringai nations. Our electorate is large and incorporates many different groups. From the south where I live in Wallamadigal country all the way to Durrobin, the Hawkesbury River in the north. This land has a rich and deep history. I wish to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people who have and do reside within the area, who may be on the call, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. And I acknowledge and uphold their intrinsic connection and continuing relationships to country. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders being the oldest continuous living culture in the world, and their sovereignty over their lands was never ceded. Connection with our environment is why we're here tonight. Our land, water and sky are all impacted by human activity, and now, as always, we need to make significant changes to avert, adapt to, and build resilience to the ongoing and continuing impacts of climate change. We would love for you to say hi in the chat. Tell us where you're from in Berowra, in the electorate of Berowra. And if you already have a question for our panel and guests tonight, please add that as well. We'll be moderating the chat as we go along. But to start our discussions, I'm going to hand over to Nat Isaacs, who is the driving force and a brilliant woman of 1 Million Women, and she's going to set the scene for tonight.
Thank you so much, Paula. Thank you, everybody, and welcome to the Berowra Electorate Community Forum. This is the first of our forums for our new campaign, or our election campaign, called She Votes. And Bree, would you pop us back on, gallery mode? Just before I get started, the one thing I really love doing is, just for a sec, could everybody go on, put their videos on, because we could just quickly say hello to each other, and Bree's going to take a screenshot of everybody, and we'll do this beautiful montage of this beautiful forum of all you wonderful people. Look how many of you on this call tonight. It is sensational. So pop on your videos just so we can say hello and take a screenshot, and that would be amazing. And we're still in. Fantastic. Thank you so much. We'll scroll across, say hello in the chat. It's really important to have sessions like this where we can all connect with each other, and to connect with the candidates of the Berowra electorate. I would like to acknowledge the land that I'm talking to you from today, and that is the Darrell country. And I'm right down here in Wollongong, and it's a very beautiful place to be too. And so why we're doing this tonight? Well, of course, there's an election coming up and we want to hear from the candidates, but we want to hear about something really specific, and it's all part of the work that we do at 1 Million Women, that we're focusing on at the moment. And for this, for the election, we are prioritizing clean, affordable energy now, and we're really focused on this. Those of you who follow 1 Million Women really a lot will see that we are dedicated to this work. We think that home electrification is one of the most powerful things that we can do to live climate action and to address our cost of living at the same time. And it is a real and tangible solution. And, it's all about getting our homes off gas. It's about being energy efficient. It's about creating comfortable, healthy homes. 25% of Australia's emissions actually come from our households, and we can eliminate this pollution by replacing gas appliances like gas heaters, gas stoves, replacing petrol and diesel cars with, with efficient electric alternatives. And wherever we can to power our homes with solar, and to get to get ourselves off fossil fuel power plants forever. And I know that we can't do everything all at once, but when our appliances are done and they need replacing, then it is really important that we do the right thing and we choose the right thing to replace it by. An efficient electric home with solar and batteries could save us up to $3,000 a year off our energy bills. And, this is really massive. I think that, well, actually, every single bit of CO2 that we can stop from, entering the atmosphere from our households actually puts money back in our pockets. Australian rooftop solar is one of the cheapest sources of energy in the world. And, an efficient electric home with solar and batteries is really, it gives us this energy independence, which is what we are all striving for. And I think that it's really important that our households are part of the solution. If we are to meet our climate targets, we need to make these deep emissions cuts within the next 5 years. And we know that this is what women across the country want. We did a survey last year with 4,400 women took the survey, and 90% of those women have been taking steps, to electrify their homes, making them more energy efficient, doing everything we can to bring down our power bills. But so many women told us in that survey that the upfront costs are the barrier to keep going. And over 65% of the women that took that survey said that they would act if there were government incentives or rebates to help them, with solar and batteries and to get off gas. And this work has been reinforced. Earlier this year, 1 million women took a delegation of women to Canberra, 24 women, to talk to politicians across the political spectrum. We think that all politicians can get behind this. We have a policy ask, and it is that the next, through the next term of government, that we get support for at least 1 million households to electrify over the next 3 years, or to be on the road to electrifying. We need to do this if we are to keep on track to reach our 2030 targets and our 2035 targets. And I think, governments play such a key role in overcoming the barriers, unlocking opportunities. And we need to make sure that women from all lifestyle circumstances are being supported, because we know this story isn't equal. And when we went to Canberra, the women that we took had such real and authentic stories about, their circumstances. Renters that, that have no access to solar. Women that if they could electrify their homes, it would support them with their super. Women that have electrified their homes and their energy bills have been slashed to zero. These are the real stories, and we need the support from governments. And so this is our ask. We're calling on all politicians to support 1 million households to electrify over the next term of government. So thank you so much for being here tonight to hear from these amazing local women who came to Canberra with us, and from your candidates. We hope that our work will bridge the gap between real women's stories and the lived experience and the federal political discourse, and showing politicians that home electrification and home electrification policies is literally a win-win. and that it enjoys broad community support, and that it responds to our cost of living, as well as responding to climate action. So thank you so very much for being here. Over to you, Paula, and yeah, and thank you all.
Thanks, Nat. So tonight, I'm really excited about this chat. As Nat mentioned, I was part of the delegation that went to Canberra with 1 million women in February. And I also spend time in our community advocating for climate change. And advocacy activities mean dealing with and interacting with our representatives on different levels of government. So these types of community forums and the crazy election days are really important opportunities for us to be able to hear what our candidates have to say on the policies that we're talking about tonight and what they propose to do if they end up in Canberra. And it's also really important to be able to ask lots of questions of them. Delegation to Canberra was a really great reminder for me that we must talk with our representatives as much as we can about the big issues and that we all can do it and we need to do it and hold them account as well to what their job is, which is to represent us. So a big welcome to our candidates. Thank you for coming along. We invited all the nominated candidates that were known by today to join tonight's panel discussion, and we were really lucky to get the 4 who have joined us tonight. I'm going to introduce them in alphabetical order. And so if you wouldn't mind giving a little wave when I get to you, that would be fantastic. I'm going to start with Tina Brown. Tina is a mum and a small business owner. She is running as a community independent in Berowra. Grew up in Lane Cove, educated in Chatswood, and has been a resident of the Berowra electorate for many years. She is well known to many sectors in the electorate through her business networks and her support of local charities and not-for-profits, including the Hornsby Coringo Women's Shelter and Lifeline. She's the founder and the publisher of The Post, a monthly newsletter that's centred on the northern suburbs of Sydney. In recent years, Tina has also dedicated herself to promoting and supporting women in small business through a number of coaching, mentoring, and network activities. Welcome, Tina.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Brendan Clarke from the Fusion Party. Thanks, Brendan. Brendan's an engineer, technology evangelist, husband and dad. He's been a previous candidate for Berowra in 2022, 2019, 2016, the overlapping state seat of Hornsby in 2024 on behalf of the Fusion and the Science Party. All right. Welcome, Brendan. We also have Martin Cousins from the Greens. Martin's a chemical engineer and has a Master's of Environmental Studies by training. For more than 20 years, he's worked in energy efficiency, demand management, and now carbon abatement. He is proud of his achievements of reducing energy costs and enabling emissions reduction for larger businesses. He also facilitates professional development and networking for energy industry professionals and keeps up to date by chairing the Sydney branch of the Australian Institute of Energy. Martin's an active community member, participating in council environmental programs including bush care and endangered species protection, and volunteers with his local sports associations. He's lived in the neighbouring Bradfield electorate for 17 years, but I assume got redistributed into Berowra. Welcome, Martin.
Thank you.
Now, and then last but not least, Benson Koschinski, who's part of the Australian Labor Party. Benson is 29, video and motion graphics editor, currently working in the commercial video production industry. This is Benson's second time running as Berowra's Labor candidate after running previously in the 2022 election. He's lived in the area his entire life and has attended Pennant Hills High School, where he first began volunteering for political action groups such as Australian Youth Climate Coalition, a group he continued to campaign with throughout university, studying science and media. In 2020, shortly after the Black Summer fires, Benson decided to join Young Labor so that he could play a part in advocating for stronger action on climate as part of the largest political party in our country. Benson believes that advocating for social justice and political progress wherever possible is an important civic duty. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. Quick explanation. Tonight's event's an opportunity for all of us to ask some questions of the candidates. It's not intended to be a debate, so we're not going to rebut each other's answers. This will help us to stay on track because we will run out of time very quickly. I have a few questions for the candidates, but then we will go to the chat for others to send through any questions. If you've got any questions, please feel free to add them in now. If you have a question for one specific candidate, please just add that in and we will go to them first, and then others will have an opportunity to also respond. So we are going to try and stick to a time limit for answers of 1 minute, and we'll see how we go. Some will be shorter, some will be longer. And after we've done our Q&A session, another one of our 1 Million Women team, Michelle Lawsuck, will be doing a short overview of how our preferential voting system works, so that we can make sure that people understand it so that you can use your vote as strategically as possible for whatever issues may be most important to you. So, to get us started, let me go to my first question. I'm going to go around the panel and I'd like to ask you if you could give us a short introduction on yourself, and really we want to know what made you decide to run in the election, and if you've learned anything or been surprised by anything in the running of this campaign, as short or long as it might have been for you, depending on when you started. I'm going to throw to Martin to answer first.
Okay, so yeah, so the first, firstly, thank you for your acknowledgement and your introduction. You're welcome here, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all. And yeah, I am also coming from the lands of the Darug people. So the first part was why run? Yes, correct for this question. Yeah. So look, I keep an eye on politics. I watch politics and listen to what our politicians are saying, both local, state and federal, and particularly in the federal arena. And oftentimes what I hear annoys me, particularly from the major parties. And so I thought I'd put myself forward and use my knowledge and background and experience and contribute what I could to the discussion and the electorate, and put forward Greens policies. And there are a number of things, I suppose, in the energy space this time around. The offerings of the major parties, nuclear, gas, and I thought I could contribute to the discussion on those. And obviously not in favour of either of those, myself or the Greens party. So I think we're on broadly the right track with renewables and storage.
Awesome.
Yep. And so the surprise quickly, I suppose, actually leading up to the election, as well as now, is the popularity of nuclear amongst parts of the electorate. So I think that's something we have to counter. But also some of the anecdotes and little one-liners that you hear when you're standing at stations handing out flyers. And my favourite so far is, if I can get it right, you can't be a science teacher and not vote for the Greens. So
it's a new slogan.
If you understand science, then yes, you understand the importance of action on climate and doing as much as we can, as quickly as we can.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Martin. I'm going to throw to you next, Benson.
Is getting my mic on? Yeah. Hi. Thanks, Paula, for the introduction. And it's great also to be here to speak to everyone as part of this great organization. I think the first thing I'd say about why I'm running, I think it comes down to the fact that I consider myself a sound-minded person who's got something to offer in terms of being a young person and someone who has experience in this area, both with my studies, but also simply as a young person. Climate change is a huge issue for me and my generation. And the Labor Party is the party that has historically brought through the major changes that have made Australia into a better country, the changes that we arguably could say are what makes us Australian. So I'm here basically to advocate for a very strong position on climate change as a young member of the party. Obviously, there's a lot of people in the party of different persuasions, and that's what makes the Labor Party so great, the fact that we're a sort of open democracy of different people. So that's my role here. I've got the opportunity to stand in my local community, which is wonderful. So I'm really hoping that I can bring that to the table. In terms of what surprised me, which continues to surprise me both now and the last time I ran, was how much just general enthusiasm and I guess goodwill there is for political candidates on the field. You sort of go into it thinking there's going to be a whole lot of hostility, basically because of the news media cycle. But you realize that when it comes down to it, and you speak to people in the grassroots community, people are just want change, and they're enthusiastic to talk about change and to talk about ideas that may not be 3-word slogans. So it's really cool basically to have that affirming experience as a candidate, and I'm hoping that as a potential member of parliament, I can bring that candor and directness to a future government.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I think it's amazing. On the ground, active democracy is really, really important. Tina.
Thank you. So, first of all, thank you for hosting for 1 Million Women tonight. And it's very inspiring to have such an organisation in Australia and in the community and to be a part of that. I'm standing on a platform of climate change, respect for women, integrity in politics, and all of my policies are on my website. But the reason that I'm standing is I guess, a voter that has decided I'm not happy with what's been going on with successive governments over the years, in particular the last 10 years. And I see this as an opportunity to create real change in my community where I live and work and where my children will grow up and have their. I want to leave the planet in a better place than I found it. And it starts from the bottom up. So instead of doing politics down from the top down, I believe that we have an opportunity now to actually hear the voices of our community of Berowra and deliver politics from the bottom up. And that includes taking into consideration our climate and the way that we live here, and everything that we will be discussing tonight, from electrifying our homes to educating our children, caring for the aged. And there's just all manner of issues, which I'm sure some of will be touched on this evening. But what's being brought to me by the community is not only cost of living, it is the climate, and it is the fact that I have observed in living here that we don't hear about the climate for our members here at a federal level or a state level. And I find that deeply concerning. And that's why I'm standing, is to make a change in that space specifically. And as a mum and a local business owner, I have a lot to bring to the table, and I'm very excited to do so. And I feel very privileged to be in this position to share this and to hear from my community and bring it all forward. What surprised me, there's a few things that have surprised me, and it's actually hard to name one because there's quite a few things that have surprised me. But I just want to say what's surprised me recently is standing out at the fountain in Hornsby, and literally just people walking over, congratulating me for standing and saying that they are so excited to see more representation here. So, and I just want to say to Martin and Brendan and Benson that equally it is very exciting. We're competitors, but we have a lot in common as well. And I think we've got some great candidates here.
Yeah. Thanks, Tina. And Brendan.
Yeah, hi guys. I hope you can hear me fine. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So I started here. I suppose I started in politics. I was always interested in politics, but it really took when the Liberal Party took over government about 2013 to destroy the renewable energy targets and literally slash science, R&D spending, the CSIRO and the education, and literally just put a slash and burn approach to everything that makes Australia, a good country. And that enraged me because it was like, we've got this climate emergency coming along, and they basically killed all the institutions that were developed to fight that, right? The Renewable Energy Commission, which was actually making a profit at the time, which is unheard of in any government department. And that just really, really motivated me to actually stand up. I live in Hornsby Heights. It's a very, very leafy area. We get bushfires around here. So, obviously climate change it's on my mind. I used to live in a town called Aberdeen, which was, don't know if you've been near there, you've got like a moonscape of all the coal mines around the place. And so that really got me on trying to focus on the environment and actually looking at alternative sources of energy. And so a few parties came up with an 800% renewable energy target back in 2016 or 19, I can't remember now. It's a long time ago, which the Greens adopted one as well. So, but the idea is to electrify everything and then become a next exporter of power. So you would have seen the power project that's going to export power from the Northern Territory over to Singapore and also exporting green hydrogen. So we can do that as Australia. And I think a lot of the Liberal Party in the recent thing has been like, we can't do this sort of thing. We're just a world's quarry. And I want to stand up and say, no, Australia has got a lot of inventions, a lot of creativity, a lot of scientists and engineers, and we should be proud of what we've done and focus more on that sort of being the world's leader, not the follower of renewable energy, right? One thing that surprised me in this area is like there's a lot of people who's really, really excited about climate change, as in what we can do to fix it, right? But also, which is a little bit disappointing, is a lot of people don't understand the voting system. And so we really need, and I'm glad that your organisation is going to talk about that at the end of this session to try to get those people to be educated on how they can make their vote count, right? So the Liberal Party is very, very famous at telling everyone just to vote one, and that really destroys your power of your vote, especially in a Liberal seat like this, where every preference counts, right? Thank you.
Michelle's going to give us all the lowdown a little bit later on that. So thank you. I am moving a little bit more into climate change specifically. The Berowra electorate is large and diverse, and as a collective, we've seen a fair number of impacts of climate change here. Fire, flood, we've already touched on fire, drought, there's the loss of biodiversity in our national parks in the area. So what I'd like to ask each of you, if you could give me answer the question, which is what policies are you advocating that can help community to firstly reduce climate change and also to adapt to the ongoing impacts, because we have the impacts here, we're living with them. So now adaptation is also on the table. It is a big question. And I know that some parties have more, everybody's got great policies that address this. So maybe if we could keep to like top three or one or two key things that we think might make some impact on this space. So I'm going to start with Tina, please.
You're on mute, Tina.
Yeah.
Sorry about
That's
that.
all right.
I
It's
just lost
that I like, Tina. That's okay.
Two of them here, actually. They don't see me, so they want to be online. Okay, sorry about that. So I think the key is in electrifying the community, basically. And I'd like to see, and what is in my policy, which is online, there's a long version and a short version. We can certainly issue the long version to anyone who wants it. It is online. But we're talking about a range of initiatives to come into play to reduce climate change. And that includes not just buses and homes and businesses, but also aged care facilities, hospitals, the whole lot. So we would like to see grants offered and low interest loans to make it accessible. And I know Labor has put forward a few things in that space, and we are waiting to see what the other major parties will be offering. But it's all around for my platform, it is around making it affordable and accessible, and it is a transition. So when I turn the mainstream media on and I have a look at what's on the news and they say it's too expensive, the way that I approach this just as a consumer and a mum and a regular person, whether you're renting or you own a home, is to probably assess your own unique situation. And I recently listened to a podcast, and it was very relevant for our electorate, actually, because it was someone that lived in a very old home, over 100 years old. And that is actually quite hard and expensive if you try and tackle it all at once. And so a lot of what has been put forward by 1 Million Women when they went down to Canberra to address those federal members is something that I would also endorse. And it's about the most simple things, from rooftop solar to double glazing batteries. So that's what's talked about in my policies. And I think that as I said, it's a transition. So what I'm advocating is to, whatever is best for the unique individual, to start small and then incrementally electrify your home. So in order to do that, because we've got such a diverse range of incomes, is if the government can actually subsidise and give some rebates and some discounts, and look at how we can help our own people in our own electorate make that happen in a way. Because if we pay now, then we pay less later over time. But I know it can be quite scary to think, how do I actually just change my whole home right now into being fully electrified so that I can deliver the cost savings? So we actually need help from the government, and we need assistance. And that is why I'm looking to see what both of the major parties are putting out, to see what will align best with the policy that I've just put out and that will work for my community.
Yeah, it's providing optionality for lots of people to be able to make that change, because it's a process, like you say. It's a transition, particularly in the house, based on affordability and what you can do. Heritage listed houses are a great example. Brendan, Fusion.
Yeah, thank you. So there's obviously electrifying everything. I think that's the common theme here at the moment. Batteries, we would really want to put some sort of basically interest-free loans available for those, because at the moment we got solar panels recently. We wanted to get batteries, right? But you have to pay up front. Otherwise, you have to pay these what they call interest-free, but they're not. They actually have a payment on charge of them, right? So you still have to pay some fee. It's effectively interest, right? But we'd rather the government pay for that, because that is still more expensive than paying up front, right? And so if you could actually have an interest-free loan, that would actually get rid of some of the barriers of people to be able to afford batteries and the solar panels. Because the problem with solar panels is you get most of your usage during the day. Everything you consume at night time you have to pay for, unless you've got battery storage. We'd also like to support the certain EV vehicles that are going to come into the Australian market soon, which have enabled to be able to plug into your house to charge, obviously, but then add back into your house during night time. So operating as a large scale battery, right? Yeah. And obviously, one of the arguments, definitely by the Conservatives, is how are you going to charge all your electric vehicles? Well, you need to actually build a grid that actually is built to be able to support this rapid electric houses and across the state. So connecting the grids, modernising the grids, building those large-scale battery storages, and also your rooftop solar, your heat pumps for your hot water systems and things like that. So everything's electric, and you've actually got sufficient storage to be able to not put too much power into the grid during the day when they don't need it, right? Because that's what engine companies are whinging about at the moment. You can be putting that into your batteries. And that way, during the night time, you're down any extra power you can take from the grid because the grid has to have some sort of baseload power. So you could be using that at the same time to charge your car, etc. So that's one of the things that we're looking at.
Yeah, it sounds very holistic as well across the network.
And that's the thing, right? It's not like you start from everything can help. But one thing I did mention is that the uplifting of the standards of new houses, right? At the moment, it's not very good. Double glazing should be like a standard feature of houses, right? And the extra cost is not very much compared to the eventual, cost of energy. So if you can do it up front and you can make it across the board, then you get the scale of efficiency, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, completely agree. It's where all levels of government need to work together to putting the whole package together. Benson.
Yeah, thanks, Paula. So I think there's obviously lots to talk about in terms of electrification and making the home more affordable and energy more affordable in that regard. But I think the question that you're asking was to do with biodiversity and climate change impacts. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's around, policies that can reduce the climate change. So
Yeah.
what's causing it, but also how do we adapt to the ongoing impacts?
Yeah, so obviously a big part of the last term of government was that the Labor government brought through the Climate Change Act, which was basically for the first time legislating a whole lot of things which some governments had done prior to that, but were about actually codifying things such as emissions reduction, but also coping with climate change impacts. So obviously the big headline item is that the 43% emissions reductions by 2030 was legislated, and that is going to be met according to all predictions. We are going to meet that target, which is excellent because it means we are getting on with the job of reducing emissions. But the other part of the Climate Change Act was to actually allow for preparation for adaptation and other things of that nature. So we now have a system in place for essentially reporting and for governments to make informed decisions about what is the best way to perform adaptation for climate change. And I'm going to be honest, we don't exactly know what those things are right now in terms of what is the best actions for the government to take, but we have the system in place now for us to make those informed decisions. So whether that is to do with something which is at a more of a state level versus a national level, the framework is there and we're able to respond to that, which is really important. Obviously on environment health, we had the EPA being drafted and wanting to propose that in the last term of government, and unfortunately that wasn't able to get through. I'm obviously not in government. It's something that I would very much like to have seen, but Labor has committed to reintroducing the EPA and getting that through in the next term of government if we win the election. And just some other facts, we've doubled funding to national parks, including expanding our oceans protected areas. And I know there's been debate about the Environment Minister approving coal mines, and there's discussion about whether an extension is an approval and all that stuff. But the fact is also that this is actually the first term of government where we've had an Environment Minister block a coal mine. And that is, of course, part of the Climate Change Act, which has brought in all of these powers. So that probably is as much as I can say about coping with climate change, although there is also the Hazards Insurance Partnership, which has been developed by Labor to improve insurance affordability and availability with regard to climate change. So essentially, there's a lot of work going behind the scenes that the Labor Party has contributed to, and I'm really proud to be with the Parliament that's done that, the party that's done that.
Thanks, Benson. And Martin.
Okay, so as you say, it's a big question,
Yeah.
and so for the Greens, we've had representatives in local, state, and federal governments, and so policies across all of those, and also actions that our representatives have taken. So I'll switch back and forth a little bit between those different levels of government, if I can. But our policies also, some of them are at the very high level, and some of them are at the lower level, like what we can do to assist consumers and householders to electrify, to reduce their bills. But right at the top of the list is stop new coal and gas. So stopping the problem from getting worse. And so that's an Australian Greens policy. And then if I switch over to ACT Greens, where they're working to get the ACT, or working with Labor, I should say, to get the ACT off gas. There's a policy there, so no new gas in new developments, or no gas in new developments. So again, it's an important first step. Stop making the problem getting worse, and don't put in equipment and things that are going to be a legacy and going to be there for 20, 30, 40 years. So, of course, I've got there's a huge list.
I know. Two or three things, Martin.
Yep. Yeah. So I guess, well, as a message, in a number of ways, the Greens, we think we get better out of the major parties. We lead the way. We force them to make better decisions. And so we've had a policy of assisting households and business to install storage and to electrify. So subsidies for those batteries and electrification technologies and low interest loans. So it's very pleasing to see Labor, taking that up, running with it, and announcing that recently, that they're going to assist households with battery storage. I guess the other point, just to finish for the Greens, obviously protection of native forests. So all of those things that are going to reduce emissions and help our environment, help protect our endangered species are a core part for the Greens. So protection of forests, for example, protection of oceans, environmental regulations, around aquaculture, for example, just is very topical recently. We know environment is going to be under increasing stress with climate change. We need to give our species and our ecosystems the best chance of survival. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. I am watching the time. We are fast getting into our Q&A for our audience. The last question I have is around cost of living, and we have touched on some of the answers around this already, but I'll just I'll throw to you with a question, and if there's any gaps left from what you have already explained, we might fill in the blanks and then throw to the Q&A in the chat, because I really want to make sure everybody has a chance to ask the question. Cost of living, major issue for Australians at the moment. We know that it affects all electorates, and obviously we also know that it is linked to the increasing impacts of climate change. Nat mentioned that the savings that we can achieve in households for electrification is a lot, and it will make a massive difference to working families. There's also the health benefits, but we haven't got time to get into that. It's a big one. When we were together as a delegation in Canberra, as Nat mentioned, all the stories just brought back to me how important it was to focus on electrification across different constituent groups. So people who live in their own homes, people in social housing, renters is a really big one, because they have less agency in that space, as well as social housing. I may have said that already. When we discussed it, the reduction in bills is a lot. And we also talked about the fact that Labor brought out a $3.5 billion electricity bill rebate or discount one-off. The cost of spending that money could also have been used to incentivise homeowners to put 1 million homeowners across Australia to have home storage and batteries. So when we're looking at progressive ways to transition, I'm just wondering if there are any policies which you haven't touched on that, if elected, you would be championing in Parliament for household electrification. So I will start with Brendan on this one. And I'm going to keep it short because I want to get to the chat.
Is it limited to only electrification, or is it listed founding affordability?
That's what we're working. That's what our policy ask is around household electrification, because that is what, hits home for our community. Yeah, well, it's the same thing. I mean, if you're a renter and you don't have the ability to control it, you should be able to have some of the fruits of the power savings that the landlord has on the solar panels, right? You shouldn't be slugged for that because they're getting savings from the solar panels. So it's got to be equitable to everybody. Right. Yeah. The other thing is that one of the things where it's really expensive, as I said, if you get solar panels, you have to pay up front, otherwise you pay more, right? And then there's a lot of well, we didn't get solar panels for a long time because we didn't want to pay the upfront costs because we didn't have the money, right? So but eventually we did it, and it ended up saving us some money. Now. The problem is
not everyone has the same level of funds that we have, and even though don't have that much, but other people look less, and that's a really big impediment to actually them getting solar at all, right? And so they're usually the people that can't afford are usually the person that pays the most because they can't afford to get the electrification, right? And that's the heat pumps for the hot water systems, changing gas stoves to induction.
Induction.
And getting a proper installation and things like that. So,
yeah, as we've talked. Okay, Benson.
Thanks. Brendan. Yeah, look, there's a lot to talk about in terms of what Labor is doing for electrification and boosting the energy availability of clean energy. There's just three main areas that I want to draw attention to. Obviously, top of the list is the Cheaper Home Batteries program, which has come out, which is a really excellent proposal from the government. So we're obviously going to be reducing the costs of battery installation by about 30% on install costs, which on average will be about $4,000 for the usual household, and that discount will be delivered through the existing small-scale renew scheme, which has delivered solar subsidies over the last more than a decade. And that, of course, is the program which has brought us to now have the highest solar in the world. So it's really exciting that that same scheme is now being utilized to basically the next logical step in the process, which is to store that power, that huge resource, which is now actually exceeding the amount of power of all the coal plants in Australia. So it's a very exciting policy. Obviously, we've also got the Household Energy Upgrades Fund, which is through the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, which is obviously the fund which the government funds, and that is providing low-cost finance for all of these things that we're talking about, like solar PV systems and batteries and solar hot water and double glazed windows and all sorts of things that are about making homes more energy efficient and less carbon intensive. And that's available basically through the market, through providers, financial providers. And that's seen a huge impact on the ground, and we'd love to continue that program. And then, of course, there's solar banking, where we're allowing communities or who can't install their own solar systems to bank solar. So if people are in an apartment or like a body corporate, they are able to get access to these solar banks through this policy, which is really exciting. And of course, you touched on cost of living, and we can't mention that without the energy bill relief, which we brought in. Unfortunately, it's a fact of life that things are unpredictable, and the unpredictability during this term of government was that we had the biggest energy crisis since the 1970s. So we had to intervene in that regard to make sure that people were able to cope. And that has, for some people, it has managed to offset costs. And we know that residential prices will fall by about 13% over the next 10 years, provided our investment in the renewable energy and the grid infrastructure that Labor has been putting forward through its rewiring the nation and Future Made in Australia plan gets off the ground. So I'm feeling really confident about what we have as an offering as the Labor Party.
Thanks, Benson. Martin? You've got a few more.
Look, I think there've been some very good points made, already. So just a couple of additional things, I guess, or points of difference for the Greens. So we really emphasise the need for more social housing and affordable housing, and also, providing efficient, efficient housing, so housing of high standard, as well as some of these things like solar panels that these people might not be able to afford as normal homeowners do. We emphasise a better deal for renters, including longer tenure and greater certainty over rentals, which by itself doesn't ensure that you get solar or electrification or anything like that, but it provides an opportunity for people to say, look, we're going to be here for a longer period of time, gives the landlord and a tenant greater certainty and perhaps opportunity to explore some of those things. A third, I'll very quickly touch on community batteries. That might be another way that renters and people in flats can access the benefits of solar, where it's more difficult to put on strata as it is now. But a fourth thing and a point of difference for the Greens is that we really emphasise public ownership as much as possible with assets. So I look at that also from a perspective of privatisation or not privatisation. So if you look at the electricity poles and wires, for example, they've been privatised. Now the investors earn the income from those and the benefits of those. Whereas previously, if it's publicly owned, then the whole community benefits and gets a dividend from the government, or the government can invest in these sort of programs. So wherever possible, the Greens look to have public ownership of assets, and particularly important with monopoly assets and critical infrastructure.
Excellent. Thanks, Martin. And Tina?
Yeah, so just a few points that I hadn't touched on, and I don't think have been raised. First of all, I think when the government gives a one-off rebate to Australia to help with an energy bill, I don't really think that actually really helps people in the long term. It's a quick hit, it's a sugar hit. And my view of that is it's too little, often too late, and it's not enough because the bills are so high. Another thing is I've been speaking with Better Renting, and I have, heard what has been said there by renters in our community and wider. And really, the unfortunate part is that you don't know until you move in exactly how much you're going to be paying for electricity, gas, etc., until you are in the home. You get 15 minutes to view that home on a Saturday, and you're running from one thing to the next with the kids. And what would be great is some kind of star rating system that is brought in through, through the real estate. So I'm not sure how it would work yet, and I'm still in discussions with Better Renting about all of this. But I do know that we do have a real problem with the rental market in Australia, because you just do not know till you move in what you're going to get in terms of bills. And that is unacceptable for families in this electorate. And that is what we're facing right now. So that is a space that needs urgent attention, and that is something that I would advocate for. Social housing over the last 20 years has done nothing but go backwards. And I think, I had a Zoom online forum with Michael Pascoe, who is a macroeconomist, and he gave a great overview of just how dire the social housing situation is. It is diminishing, yet we are bringing more and more people into the country. Where do we expect them to live? How they expect to pay their bills? And if they do get into social housing, I don't believe that at the moment that accommodation, those units or homes, freestanding homes, are in any way considered in this equation. And that is a real crisis as well, because they can least afford it, yet they'll have the biggest bills. And what does that mean? That means that they will be cold in winter and absolutely sweating in summer. And they've got kids and families and the elderly, just like the rest of us. That needs to be addressed. I understand that something like 50,000 new homes are slated to be built. I don't know if it's the next year or whatever it is. Those 50,000 new homes, or any new homes that are being built, there needs to be legislation brought in urgently to say that all new builds should have solar and battery, and that's something that the government can advocate for.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Tina. Hey, personally would have 1,000 more questions for you all, but I'm going to throw to Bree, who's the 1 Million Women Head of Campaigns and is an all-round superstar. She's going to facilitate a few questions from the chat. Here she is. Over to you, Bree.
Hi, so thanks for all being here. And I'm just going to read out, the first question that we got is from Helen from Cherrybrook, who said, I assume all the candidates here would oppose the Liberal Party's nuclear policy, but why has radioactive nuclear waste not been not got a more prominent media coverage, as it's a really serious problem and it's crucial for Helen?
Would anyone like to answer that first?
I don't think the coalition's nuclear policy is actually serious, though. I think it's a distraction to be able to take investments out of renewable energy, right? Because otherwise, how are they going to pay for it? It's pretty expensive to build nuclear. Having said that, my party's a pro-nuclear party, but pro-nuclear research, not necessarily, but we don't support the coalition's model of the actual nuclear plants, because I don't understand how they're going to build it, and it's going to be very expensive. And the Liberal Party's literally said that they're going to withdraw renewable energy to pay for it. So I don't think it's a serious policy. I would just hope that we don't get them in, right? And therefore, some of the discussions of the actual waste have been put into places where they actually have, earthquakes and things like that. So it's probably not being very well researched at the moment. And for the Liberals to actually do nuclear power, they wouldn't have cut the CSIRO and all the scientists and made engineering jobs more expensive if they were serious about actually investing in large-scale, long-term power. Who's going to build it? Who's got the expertise? The degree cost for engineering has tripled since engineering degrees. So I don't think it's, well, I hope it's not serious, but it doesn't seem to actually have any merits.
I have something to contribute if you'd like me to speak.
Go for it.
I think the main premise of the question is of why aren't we hearing about nuclear as much, and why, I guess, is Labor not being more actively anti-nuclear, even though I think we are, is that we know, I think all of us in this room, or the Zoom call, know that the nuclear policy is really just a smokescreen for more fossil fuels. So it's really about, as candidates, and for myself as a member of the Labor Party, where are we putting our energy and what messaging are we putting out? And the fact is, if we were putting a lot of energy into basically an anti-nuclear campaign, then we don't have the opportunity, like forums like this, to talk about all the great things we've done to do with the climate and energy. And so I think it's really important, I guess, as this comes forward with this election, that's the message we're wanting to say, that look, nuclear isn't part of the solution here. We don't need it. It's not something that we want to be even entertaining as something credible. So it's a very dicey issue, but I think that hopefully that answers the question from my perspective on that approach.
Great, thanks, Benson.
I could add very briefly, if I could.
Yeah, go.
Agree broadly with what Brendan and Benson have said, but I think there's so many issues with nuclear, really, in Australia, and waste is one of them. So I guess credible sources would point these out.
Yeah, and I think
And so
the key thing is we need. Sorry, Tina.
No, that's right. I was just going to say I don't have a lot to say on this topic because it doesn't form any of my platform, and I don't believe in spending time on something I don't believe in.
Yeah, I think the thing for nuclear is it's not a now solution. It's pushing the can down the road. So it's how much time do we spend on it?
We had another
Bree.
question. Yeah, we had another question from Bev or John, I think. What opportunities are available to help people in home units get access to solar and battery power?
Would anyone like to answer?
I can. I'm not sure if there's specific green policy on that, to be honest. I do know, like I'm actually in the Ku-ring-gai electorate, local government area, and I do know that they have some subsidies available to help people, like in home units, to get solar panels, not batteries. Oh, sorry. I might be on that. I think there might be batteries as well, but I certainly looked at getting solar on my unit, and there was that funding available, which was, credit to that council. It is more expensive to put solar on strata and then divide up energy among units, but I think we do need to tackle, because there's a great opportunity out there. There's lots of more and more strata units and home units. So it'd be great if those people could access those benefits as well.
Yeah. Rewiring Australia has quite a lot of information on trying to put solar on apartments and how to go about it as well. And there's a few different organisations that can help. We in our area, we know that there's a couple of apartment blocks that are working with a dedicated provider to try and do that, and taking 18 months from the time we held an event to them actually starting to get quotes. It's such a long process through the strata, so it needs
definitely
to be
more specialised than just getting your solar on your house. There's fewer providers.
Yeah.
I will just point out about the existing policies that I mentioned previously about the Household Energy Upgrades Fund and the solar banking. These are both really important policies, which I personally would love to see expanded quite to a great extent. They are about getting these resources to places that don't have the funds, or that for people who live in apartments and can't install their own systems and that sort of thing. These policies do exist, and now with the cheaper home batteries cheaper home batteries program, obviously that's still taking shape. I would very much, as a Labor member, want to advocate for getting access to that scheme for renters as well.
Yeah, thanks, Benson.
So we had another question from Katie who said, if elected, how will you encourage the Australian people to work together to tackle climate action? Divisiveness on this issue is costing us a lot of valuable time.
Excellent question. Who'd like to have a crack?
Oh, I'll have a crack. Well, you can see that the people who came here tonight all are united in the same thing. We might have slightly different measures on how to solve the problem, but we all agree that climate action is urgent and it needs to be done as soon as possible. I mean, all need to work together, and I think we are, right? Yeah, so I think there's a common consensus, and as I said, from 2016 to this year, I've seen a lot more people coming on board for solving, like the community, solving climate change, and coming across the border as in understanding that this is becoming a more and more an emergency as they can see, the bushfires and floods and all the other issues. And there's all the technology that's gone into it has come cheaper and cheaper. So there's a big concerted effort from, all the major parties, well, except for the Conservatives, right? But all of us, right? Joining together, coming into forums like this, speaking to the public and advocating for this research and investment.
Yeah, if I may jump in.
Okay.
I would agree there, Brendan. And I think that money talks as well. And when people hear that the benefits are real and it does help their hip pocket, and we've got a cost of living crisis, we've got kids involved in so many activities, and parents who still want to have holidays with their family. I think if they can understand how that transition works for them and for their family, and if we can actually collaborate at all levels of government to get that message out, to encourage and support and share information about how to achieve. And for example, just with that last question about strata and getting solar, or any electrification in unit blocks, that sort of thing. I think it's about sharing information, storytelling, and I think community engagement, local for Berowra on climate action, even a community liaison on council. I think there's a lot that could be done. I think we need to think outside the box, and we need to work with what will work for our electorate, but also whoever is the next federal member for Berowra needs to be working across all levels of government.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is something that Nat talks about a lot. This is about storytelling, like you said, Tina, but about having conversations, which is really what 1 Million Women is about, having conversations. If you have conversation with 10 other people around this stuff, and it's about inquiry, about curiosity and sharing information, telling your lived experience, those conversations then can generate more and hopefully bring people along for the ride, because sometimes it's just not full understanding of what's going on. Martin.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there are many community groups that are active in this area. I've met with Energize Bradfield and Rewiring Australia people this morning.
Yeah.
But I think, I agree with the storytelling, and increasingly as the good news, and conversely, the doubts are dispelled. I think that will help a lot. So the current narratives around, we can't rely on 100% renewable energy, and the lights will go up and so on. Once people increasingly realise that's not the case, we'll keep going on this transition. Yeah.
Awesome. I think we probably have time for one more questions before we hand over to Michelle for preferential voting. I will just answer Ruth's question in the chat, which was about who was invited tonight. All candidates that are known, including Liberal and One Nation, were invited, but we had no response or an apology. So these four were the brilliant ones who decided to participate and be here with us. Bree, one more question?
Yeah, so I think that there's just a statement from Selena who said, for all candidates' consideration for the integration into policy, the concept of solar gardens and solar options, kind of like haystacks solar garden, is something that Selena would love you all to consider.
Yeah,
and then I think there's just one more question from Karen to Tina. It was just clarifying if you were referring to the neighbor ratings on houses.
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part of what you said. I was referring to
the neighbor ratings on houses.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't think I'm referring to that, no. Or if there was something in place that was already there, I think that I would know that that's what it was. That's not the conversations that I'm having.
Okay, excellent. Conscious of time, so I am going to hand over to Michelle, who gives a little overview of preferential and how it's really important to use our vote strategically, even in a seat that is deemed safe. Michelle.
Hi, okay. So I'm Michelle from 1 Million Women, and it's been a long time since most learned about primary school. Just wanted to do a really quick recap. I think there's a lot of misinformation about preferential voting, and it's really important for us, I think, for everybody to understand how it works, because it's one of the real strengths of our democracy. So as you can see here tonight, we have a lot of good candidates to choose from. So what do you do if you want to vote for more than one candidate? Because of preferential voting, you can vote for more than one candidate. So in Australia, this voting system is actually one of our really great strengths, because it means your vote can never, ever go to waste. So we're really, really lucky. If we're in the US, we might get to choose between two parties that we don't really like. In Australia, we don't have to choose between two, because our vote can't be wasted if we vote for a third party or a minority or an independent. So how does our preference work? In each round of voting, the candidate with the least amount of votes for that round is eliminated. So what happens to your vote if your number one choice of candidate is eliminated? So when you get your voting piece of paper, you go choose the candidates that you like in order of preferences. And what happens if the person that you like the most is eliminated from the count? So their vote is, your number one vote is redistributed and given to the candidate that you placed at number 2 on your voting form. So it can't go to waste. Your vote just flows on to your next choice. And if your number 2 choice is eliminated, your vote is then given to the candidate number 3. And this process continues for each round until one of the remaining candidates receives over 50% of the votes, which they must do to win. So your vote can't be wasted. It just goes on and on and on. It's really good. So if the candidate you put first doesn't get in, your vote automatically flows onto your second preference, and so on until one of the candidates does win. So when you go into vote, you will see all different people at pre-polling or polling handing out how to vote cards with the preferences on them. They're suggestions. They're not telling you that you have to vote that way. They're just purely suggestions. So if you know who you want to vote for beforehand, you just use your own preferences. So no one can do a preference on your behalf unless you give them that power, unless you follow their how to vote cards. So your preferences are your preferences. It really is that simple. So you don't have to follow how to vote cards. And often the candidates will do deals to preference each other to increase their share of the votes. But preferences they recommend on their how to vote cards may not reflect the issues that matter to you. So it's really important to, maybe do your research beforehand and choose which candidates you like. A really good way to do it is to put the candidate you like best first and the one you like worst last straight away, and they will never get your vote. Your vote will never flow onto them because in the end it will come down to 2 candidates after everybody else is eliminated, and your vote will flow onto, even if they're your 5 out of 6 preference, your vote will never go to the person you put last. So it's just a really good hack. I'd go first. Well, that's what I do. I go put my first preference first. Person I like the least last, and then sometimes actually go from least to best after that. It's all pretty simple. So what happens if you're voting, just say for me, I'm a climate voter. So what happens if the strongest climate candidate in my electorate has no chance of winning? Should I still vote for them? Yes, absolutely. There's some really good reasons. So if climate is important to you and you think, okay, that person who's super strong on climate won't get in, what's the point of voting to them? Why not just put the person, if it's going to come down to 2 people, why not just put that person first rather than somebody who you might actually prefer but think that your vote's going to be wasted? It's just wasting time to do it. But it's not, because one of the really good things is just say, if you vote for climate in your preferences, then you are sending a really strong message to the major political parties in particular that climate is really important to this electorate. And the other thing that does to vote for a really climate strong first is that for each number 1 vote that those minority and independent candidates may get, they get money for it. So it will help to mount a stronger campaign next time. So it's just really simple things like that. It's sending a strong message. It's supporting independence. It's supporting minor parties. It's supporting candidates who may not have a lot of access to funds anyway. So just something to keep in mind. You may love the major first and second, and that's fine too. But it's just really, if you do want to vote strategically, then you can do that, and your preferences are your own. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Michelle.
And I think we're going to put some of the brilliant tiles that 1 Million Women have in the chat.
Yes.
It probably explains it a lot better than I just.
If you'd like more information on what we've heard tonight, obviously information on the candidates, head to their websites. Their policies are there, and the information on their campaigns. We will also be sending out information on different rules. As mentioned, research before the election is really important. There's some great resources out there. The Conversation has got a policy tracker at the moment, which I used to help me out tonight. There's a website called Build a Ballot, which will put your own prepared, ready to go with your own card for the election day. There's great preferential voting as well. We will send link things as we go. The other thing, you want to see how your current MP has voted on issues important to you, you can go to theyvoteforyou.org.au as well. It's an excellent website. What is it? Thank you, Brendan. So we encourage, like we've talked about tonight, and it appears Berowra has a great advocacy, community advocates and action in already occurring. But your voice is powerful. Tonight, She Votes is a campaign that we're running to have in raising their voice on climate, informing and really coming back to 1 million we're asking around, which is clean, affordable energy now. we're asking everyone who's been on the call tonight to go and have conversation out, have 10 conversations with 10 people. All do that. 42 people on the call. I'm not doing math, so I'll leave other people to do that. But the exponential effect of having 10 conversations and then those people in 10 conversations is thousands of people. And as we talk about, a great way to help reduce the divide around these discussions, approach with curiosity, interest, and talk to people around the issues that concern them, because the lived experience is what connects us and connects us in community. So like I said, massive thank you to this. It's been really great, and I've have lots of questions. So I might come and stalk you around the streets to ask them all again. And we will send out a video and the resources over the next coming days. Now I've got Nat. Nat, you go. Nat's going to throw.
I just wanted to say what a fabulous evening, and thank you all so much for being part of it. But a huge shout out to Paula and Michelle for really pulling this together. Paula, you did an outstanding job. I just sat back and enjoyed this whole event. So thank you so very much. Thank you all for being part of 1 Million Women, and thank you to the candidates for your really insightful conversation tonight. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for
Yeah,
the
It's been great.
I think that's it. I think that's everybody.